way people have time to come in. Oh my goodness. Oh. Quick, grab a cup of coffee before we get too far.
Yeah. Now, I did not expect that we were going to have a storm today, but the weather does not look great.
Really?
Yeah, there's been sort of thunder and it's gotten very dark. So hope that we don't all lose power again.
Oh my God, that would be freaking fascinating. Yeah. Did you lose power in that last storm?
I didn't, thank
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
I wasn't here in New Jersey, but my husband was here and they lost power for like 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we were actually, I don't know, we were so lucky because we didn't lose power. We didn't have to worry about the stuff in the fridge, like
That's
all
great.
of that. And I'm convinced it's because when I heard about the storm, like Wednesday morning, I went through and like got all of our little like phone charging blocks and charged them all. So it's like the whole, if you have an umbrella, you won't look.
Yeah. That's true. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
All right, I am gonna get us started. Welcome to Empowering Women Entrepreneurs. We have Aisha Hamilton, who's the owner at Hamilton Law and focuses her practice on employment law, and she gives a voice to employees. My name is Alisa McCabe. I'm the owner at First Steps Financial, and we help small businesses by simplifying processes, organizing financials, and gaining insight using technology and strategies. Everything that we talk about this morning is informational only, and the content on this webinar is for general purposes. Today we're talking about the value of the DISC profile and what we found out about ourselves, what rings true, and what do we do with the information. And Aisha, you and I had a little bit of a discussion because I was sharing with you that I use this. So when we do our hiring, and we actually use the DISC profile because we've identified a certain profile that seems to fit with our needs. And we just seem to have a unique need in our business because we need somebody who really loves numbers and accounting, but also really loves to work with people and be outgoing and like change, because we adapt to new software quickly, whatever will make businesses work better, that kind of thing. So I think your question on it was.
Oh, and I've got to ask this because as we're talking about each other's DISC profiles, and we'll do that in this discussion, but Alisa mentioned that, they use their sort of model employee DISC profile in their hiring process, right? So they figured out that this is the perfect employee, and then they use that DISC profile to try and match their potential hires. And I thought, Alisa, how did you figure that out? Because that puts science into the hiring process, as opposed to the general, I've got to go with my gut. Is this person going to work out or not? So how did you figure that out?
Well, I wish I could say that, well, we did our DISC profile 3 years ago and we just identified everybody. No, we didn't. We did do DISC profiles across the team 3 years ago, and it was great. It was so interesting, but it took hiring the wrong people to say, like, wait a minute, hold up, let's figure out a better way to do this, because it's expensive to hire the wrong people. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up identifying, we went back and looked at everybody's DISC profile, because we make everybody take it, even new hires, like we always make. So I started looking at who didn't work out and what their DISC profile looked like, and who was really like the number one employee, and honestly, so far we have a team of number one employees. And that's what we wanted to replicate, is like, okay, what's similar amongst this group? What's similar amongst the group that didn't work out? And we came up with a profile. Now,
I see that we have Amanda on, we have people on who have employees. And so you kind of want to also think about, how does my DISC profile fit with my employee's DISC profile? Do I necessarily want the same characteristics? In which case, you know, Alisa, you and I have very similar disc profiles. I'm not sure that we would be very good together in an employment relationship, right? Because
Right,
that's
because we're so similar.
right.
And so actually when the hire that works out the best is actually the yin to my yang. It really is. I mean, they don't have the same qualities I do, which is fabulous because I don't need another. So I have a high D and a high I and a very low C. I don't need somebody that is, like me in the dominance area and the, thinks fast and has just wants, just doesn't need the details. Just tell me the main line and I can make decisions because that's not exactly who you want for your accountant.
So it was funny because we were looking at each other's disc profiles, right? Now, when I took the disc profile back in 2018, I had never heard of it. And someone at a networking event was doing a presentation on disc profiles. And I thought, hey, $60, I'm going to take a disc profile. Why not? I was blown away by how accurate it was.
Yes, me too. Me too. It actually, and I told you, we were talking about our disc profiles, and it made me almost become accepting of things that I didn't quite feel comfortable with in my personality. And I was like, all right, those are all really good points about all those things that I do. Like, I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's me. But
So
I did.
we were joking that we are both very low C's, right? So that's that last category of you really like to be driven by rules and procedures, and you like to know what the box is, and that's your safety zone. And neither of us are that.
No, no. Yeah, like quality, accuracy, expertise, and competency. That's what we place value on the C level. Yeah, that wasn't us.
Yeah,
Okay. I became okay with it because both of us are high in the D, which is on accomplishing results, the bottom line, and confidence. We see big pictures, we're blunt, we like challenges, and we get straight to the point. And those are all fabulous things.
yeah. But it also it was very interesting because I think, and you made this point, right? Is it allowed me to embrace those characteristics as positives, whereas society makes you feel that those are negatives, especially for women.
Yeah, no, when I read Lean In and they were saying she was saying how she was called bossy. I'm like, so
Exactly. So was there anything in your profile that you disagreed with?
one of them said I don't pay attention to detail or I'm impulsive. And I think that it maybe it's tempered with age. How's that? So I do pay, I mean, and oh no, I know what it was. One of them says like not very organized.
Right.
I'm like, look, I've raised 6 children. We were at like 4 different schools. You don't get kids through that without being organized. Sorry. You can't have dinner and get everybody to where they're supposed to be without being organized. So that was the one I disagreed with. I have a different sense of organization. What about you? Did you see anything that you didn't like? You were like, no, that's not me.
I completely agreed with it. And
Oh, did you?
it was so funny. So I I I took this thing with a healthy dose of skepticism because I've never done one of these personality tests before and I think they're all bullshit. So until I took this profile and I'm sitting there reading it going, oh, like yeah, that is kind of what irritates me. That does seem to make sense to me. But Irene asked, where do you take this profile? And at least I know you had a link to.
I do. I'm going to put a link in the chat. It's Tony Robbins has a free disc profile. And Irene, it's good to see you too. I'm glad to see you're out and about. So yeah, if I can put the link in there. I just have to look for it, but it's Tony Robbins disc profile. It's fabulous. It's free. And then you can get the paid version and it's like $15 for the paid version. It just goes into, more depth of what you have. I'm going to find it for you right now. So, what, we were talking about a bunch of other things. So what did you think about, like, I mean, I already told you, I'm asking employees if I can, can I?
Yeah,
Like,
you can. So if it's part of your normal, uniformly applied hiring process or internal management process, right? You can do that. You cannot just target an employee for a DISC profile because you're looking for reasons to get rid of them. And you can't target an employee, say you're African American woman who's 63 years old and walks with a limp, is the only person who was given the DISC profile and not others. So it has to be uniformly applied. And actually, a lot of companies use this type of assessment to determine if people are a good fit or not. So I would say to you, doesn't matter how big your company is, if you're even just hiring one person, even just hiring an administrative assistant to work with you, or you're like, okay, look, it's time to bring on another lawyer. Have them do the DISC profile, because I think it's valuable information, and that information actually falls within the characteristics of what you would be allowed to make an employment decision on. You're not making that employment decision on age, race, gender, sex, any of those characteristics. But this is okay because it's about fit, right? It's about business objectives, and especially as you've mentioned, you've discovered that there are certain DISC profiles that are not a good fit.
Yeah, and it really, and hiring somebody and training someone is very, very expensive. And Amanda is hiring somebody, and and I have to encourage everybody. I put the link in the chat. Definitely take the DISC profile, because so what happens is when I hire somebody and they fit our DISC profile, I give them my DISC profile.
Right.
So that they know how to talk to me. Like, don't expect me to be something I'm not. Like, I am, and that's what I love about it. It actually tells you like how to talk to this person. It's almost, so it helps you to speak. So my team is all very high in the C category. They like consistency, they like detail, they like all those things, but they don't like warm, fuzzy people stuff.
Right.
And I have to tell you, I'm a warm, fuzzy people person, tell story kind of person. And they're all like, oh, she's talking again.
And you are super, your highest category was the I.
Was the I? Yeah, I'm like total people
person. Yeah. And that makes complete sense, right? So you are an entrepreneur, you are the rainmaker.
Yeah.
You are always out there networking and developing your business. So how could you not be that, right? That's really cool.
But it sets expectations from the beginning.
Yeah.
So, and given that, Jason says he's skeptical of these tests. So has he seen any scientific evidence behind the DISC? So to be honest, I don't know. I just know within my team that I need someone who pays attention to detail, and they can already be bookkeepers and accountants and CPAs and not have attention to detail.
Right.
And I actually have hired people who are CPAs who never attention to detail. So it's been great to have this as something that's helped, and letting them know. And I think it helps them relate to each other, and it helps them to relate to me.
Yeah.
So
it was funny looking at my DISC profile, right? And I'm a really high D, and I'm a high, stabilizing, right? So high S, right? And they were the equivalent score. So those were my two highest scores. But it was almost like the high D made sense to me.
Yeah.
And the high S, I was like, well, how can I possibly be a high S if I'm a high D? Because the adjectives that relate to a high S are predictable, passive, complacent, stable, right? And I was like, I guess you kind of have to be that too.
I
right?
wouldn't consider you passive at all.
I know. Yeah,
No.
I'm not passive.
But
But
I think you weren't all those. You definitely are stable.
yeah,
And you and I think the position that you're in and the job that you know, the career that you have really speaks to having D, but also having stability
yeah,
and
and I've been in the same role for 15 years, right?
yeah,
So I haven't been I'm going to start this firm. No, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do something else. So I meet people who are serial entrepreneurs, and I'm
yep,
so jealous of them because I think, oh, you're so fantastic, right? You've got this going on and that going on, and then I think maybe yesterday you gave us the statistic that most entrepreneurs
yeah.
own more than one business, and
Mhm.
I'm listening to that going, oh, that's not me. I don't even know what else I would do. So
Honestly, people usually have their second business is usually in something totally different.
yeah,
But I believe it's more of that D personality that you like a challenge. You're a risk taker. But I think that in your industry and in your career, you have a lot of challenge,
yeah.
and you actually seek out challenge. I mean, you're part of the bar association, didn't you aren't you on the board for the bar?
Mhm.
So like that's a challenge. That is a personal challenge to maintain that as well as maintain your business. I mean,
You're gonna laugh now, right? So in my disc profile as the high D, the description was, and I'm so embarrassing me saying this, it, is that you like to go after high profile positions.
no, you like recognition.
And I was like, oh, I've always sort of thought of that as like an awful characteristic, but I totally love it.
But it's true. I mean, but I also think it's nice that it is high profile, but I think it's also challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I find that about myself. I also have, taken positions like, I'm part of nonprofits where I sit on the board, and I think that's as high profile as I
But
ever.
I think you do a lot for your community. And I think you were very, I think being that people person is what is making your business successful, right?
Mhm.
Is having that high I. So as I read your disc profile, and I'm like, oh, she's such a high I. That's fantastic. Like such a people person. Yes, that makes sense to me for Alisa. That makes sense, right? Which is why I'm not I don't need the science behind it right now because the practical implication is it makes sense. But then I looked at my very low I and I thought, oh, yeah, that's why I wasn't so good at politics. It made sense.
I wonder what a politician's like. I wonder what it would be like. Actually, reading through, the description, I wonder who would be good. I have to ask you though, Aisha, have you ever thought about like giving the disc profile to potential clients?
That's a great question. I don't think I would. And here's why. Okay, so my initial gut reaction is I don't think I could do that because I think then potentially a client is not equipped to properly understand what it means and may use that as a decision to say, well, I don't want somebody who's a high D and a high S. I just want someone who's a high D,
Yeah.
right? But they may not realize that you need a balance, right? You need someone who is stable and who's going to stay in the game with you and who's going to be in it for the long haul, because that's what our cases are.
Right.
As opposed to, I've had clients come in and say, well, are you going to be a bulldog? And I said, I'm a bulldog when I need to be, but I'm not going to be a bulldog because that's what you think is an attorney profile. Right.
Right.
And I'm honest and upfront about that. I mean, I will tell people if an adversary who is also a colleague in my profession asks me for an extension of time, I will never say no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not how I roll. I've had clients say, well, they're always asking for extensions, and I'll say yeah, and I will give them a limited extension, but that is what we do in a profession, right? We have courtesy to each other. We are
Mhm.
professionals. um, I'm not going to be that, I've had attorneys on the other side who've said absolutely not, and then that sets a particular tone in the case, right? Because you're like, oh, okay, I get it, I get what game we're playing
Yeah, and then it's too rigid.
now, right?
Which you know what? That's one of the qualities of a C, of actually a low C. One of the qualities that I read in both of ours was that we tend to like adhere to like we make a decision and we adhere to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, well, Meg has something in chat. She says, when DISC is applied as part of your overall hiring practices, you're also able to see how well that prospective employee will do well within your firm in terms of culture.
Right.
So that's interesting. And it's true. Like, do they fit in with the group? Because you need them to. And I think that goes along with I have to tell you, I've actually often thought of giving clients a disc profile, like making them take it
Right.
and finding out what kind of person they are before they come on board. You could actually do that too. You could give it to your clients, potential clients, and say, like, I want to know what kind of person you are before I work with you because
Yes,
that's
I want to know what kind of case you have, and then I want to know that your check will clear. So those are probably the
can
two.
that be, can that be part of the disc profile?
And I will tell you, like, quite honestly, I work with a huge variety of personalities because
Yeah.
we're looking at the types of people that are getting terminated from positions.
Mhm.
I think a lot of that is because it was the wrong hiring choice or the wrong management relationship, right?
Right.
It then spirals into bigger issues. But if more people were doing what you do, Alisa, you would have more longevity in your teams.
Mhm.
Because you're paying attention to fit, and as Meg said, you're paying attention to corporate culture.
Yeah.
um, and so
That
that's important.
Yeah, I truly believe in that because if you have people that don't, who don't know what your mission and your vision is, they're not going to understand the company culture.
Right.
And I think there's certain, and you have to see who fits into it.
So
Um,
for Amanda, who works for a large prestigious firm, she's a divorce lawyer, and she's been charged with the responsibility of hiring a new associate. Even though she's in a larger structure, I think she is paying a lot of attention to the hiring decision because this is the person that she's going to have to work with, who's going to have to be trained by her. Fit is going to be really important. And then, as a big picture thing, it makes a lot of sense for Amanda to have sort of made that right hiring decision because now you've got longevity. And as we all know, turnover is expensive.
oh,
So I think it's actually a very exciting process if you can use sort of some kind of scientific methodology, whether it's DISC or something else, to help
right.
guide that.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, when I was, and it's funny that you say that because when I was looking for someone to work directly with me, to be my virtual assistant, or we ended up settling on a title called chief of staff because I have a friend who's a lawyer in DC, and she just took a job with a head of a department in the government, and she was called chief of staff, and she's like, what does that entitle? And he said, it's everything. You need to take everything off my plate that I don't need to deal with. I'm like, oh my God, I need one of those.
And you have
So
to anticipate it, that I don't want to deal with that before I even know that I don't want to deal with that.
and so that disc profile was different than the person that I want working on someone's books.
Yeah.
I needed somebody who was a very much a people person, so they had to have a higher I, but also had a high C. So it was a very unique position. And so it actually has been a fabulous hire. My chief of staff, it talks to the team. She's the go-between. She talks to the team all the time. and then, puts things on my plate, like, you have to pay attention to this, and this. And but it was a really useful tool because she wasn't the first person that I hired for that position. But she's the best fit.
And I also love just the concept of elevating that title to chief of staff as opposed to admin, right?
Yeah.
And I think it just gives somebody such ownership over that role and such like, yeah, like I'm really her right hand man, right hand,
Yes.
right?
And it's totally true because she was afraid to take the title. She was intimidated by it. She was very much like, oh, I don't know. And I said, this is what it entails. And she said, oh, okay, yes, I can own that.
Right.
So yeah, and it really made such a big difference on, being able to find that person. I can't stress enough how the other thing that DISC doesn't measure, and something that we haven't talked about, is emotional intelligence. And that's like being socially good and not saying things that are inappropriate, but you can usually delve into those when you talk to somebody.
Can I tell you, so this is funny. So I will generally pride myself on being in tune with other people's emotions because I spend so much time listening to other people's stories and being empathetic, and I'm like, I think of that as a good characteristic.
Yeah.
Tuesday evening, I'm part of I mentioned I was part of a board meeting, and I'm so embarrassed that I did this, and I don't know where it came from, but this is the characteristic that I think, oh yeah, I look at that in other people and I think, what a jerk. I literally in the board meeting, I noticed that it was my turn to report on one of the committees that I'm the chair of, and the executive director had not included my committee report. And I actually, for the first time in my life, called her out on it and was like, yes, I'm disappointed to see that my committee report wasn't included in the meeting minutes. So I guess I'll just have to let everybody know what was in the report. And I was just saying to my husband this morning, that was such a horrible thing to do. And I have felt bad about it since then. We're now Thursday morning and I'm still thinking about this.
Oh,
And I think those are part of that EQ that I think we need to be aware of when we do something wrong.
yeah.
And then, but I don't know how to fix it. And so he was like, well, why don't you just reach out to her and say, listen, I didn't mean to call you out publicly on a Zoom call with 35 other people on it.
That's a tough apology.
So, right?
Yeah.
And it's not something I would do.
I think it's harder for Ds, people who are high Ds, to apologize.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a hard time like admitting when you're wrong?
I don't.
You
I
don't.
actually don't. I'm okay with, and I'm actually okay with, I'm going to give her a call and just say, look, I don't know. Tuesday was a tough day, busy, and I was stressed. And I don't know why I reacted that way. And I'm really sorry. Because I think she needs to know that yes, mistakes happen, but it is not okay for me to behave that
way. Yeah.
Right. And it was not okay. And I was somewhat sort of friendly about it on the call, but that wasn't good.
Yeah.
Do that. Learn from my mistakes, people. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's a good thing. I wonder, well, I hope everybody takes a DISC profile test. We have about 2 minutes left. And Meg says that EQ, also SQ, social quotient, is critical in building and developing your team. Absolutely. You need to have, and it kind of leads into what we're going to talk about next time. We're going to talk about what company cultures fit women better and are more in tune with our needs. And I feel like this is such a good subject, given that it's going to rely on women for the most part about what's going to happen with kids going back to school or not going back to school, and going back to work or not going back to work. So, what there's so much pressure on women, I feel right now in general, to figure out, do I still really want to work here?
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, this is great. I'm sort of excited about that conversation too, because I think, as you go down your hiring process, it's going to be really important to make sure that you're able to live with what their parameters are going to be, right?
yeah.
And you have to be extremely careful in your interviewing
Oh my God.
about not asking about, do you have small children, how are their schools going to be, because that is absolutely going to translate into gender bias in hiring.
Absolutely.
You
But
have,
you can ask those questions once people are hired.
yes, because you can ask in the context of scheduling,
Yeah.
these are what you can tell, these are what our hours are, these are what our expectations are, we'd like to make you this job offer, are you able to make that work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You cannot ask, how many small children do you have and what grades are they in?
I know. And yeah, I don't know. One time I did interview somebody, and she told me, because we work remotely, so, and we work whatever hours work for us. We get tasks done, and we communicate with our clients at their leisure. I had someone who worked a full-time job, was homeschooling like two kids, and was going to work for me. And I thought, that's just not going to work.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know how you would do that, and especially if you had to communicate with a client during the day. So I think some people are over ambitious
Right.
about what they think they can do. Um, Irene, last week's session is posted on First Steps Financial YouTube site, so you can see that. And we're looking at getting our own Facebook page so that we can post these there. Anyway, it was so good talking with you, Aisha.
Me too. These are always fun. This
I
one
know.
really fun. We laughed a lot with
Oh, love
sharing.
talking about laying our personalities out there. So much fun just picking at it, like crows picking at roadkill. So it was good talking with you, and I'll talk to you next Thursday, and we'll see everybody next Thursday. Thanks for joining us.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.